Your inner child, your wounded parts are going to come up in your relationship. You have to know how to like navigate that in a relationship with somebody because it's going to come up. I'm really grateful that you felt safe enough to go through that with me. I'm also really lucky that I got to see you show me those parts of you. And sometimes things can get messy. I understand that. Sometimes I get it way wrong and I take things personal and I think it's about me and I get defensive. You know, the same for you. We have these moments, but we practice. We practice communicating with each other. We practice. And a lot of times we get it right.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
Speaking of faking it till we make it.
Yes.
How often do you feel like you have navigated your life that way? Where you're like, I'm showing up and pretending like I know what I'm doing. I feel like 90% of my life is that way.
Yeah.
I can think back to every job that I've ever had, even the jobs that had like, because I've had jobs before where it's like extensive training, right? Mm-hmm. Some jobs are like, hey, you're on that duty, go do that. I'm like, okay. I actually prefer those jobs, right? But then there's those other ones where it's like a 3-week or like, how long did I have to go through training to be a cop? It was like months. I don't even remember. I blocked it all out. But those time periods, even after all of that training, I still didn't have a clue what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
I'm just pretending, right? 43 years old and I'm just pretending to be an adult.
Pretending to be an adult. It's like a kid playing dress up.
Mm-hmm.
Playing like you're an adult. You're like, here we are.
I had this thought I was going to share with you this morning and I totally spaced it because I'm going to create some content around it. And I was thinking about, do you remember that game as a kid? I mean, it's not just when we were kids. It's still a game that exists today, but memory. Right? That game where you've got the little...
Remind me. It was memory. It was a pun. It was funny. Like, I can't remember. I was punny.
So you're matching the tiles,
Yes.
right? So you flip them over and then you match. I loved that game as a kid.
Too.
And I had like, I can still remember some of the tiles and like my favorite ones. And it was like, oh, I was going to get I think they were animals. I think I got like the seal or whatever. But so I was thinking about the way that healing is like that game of memory where you'll flip over a tile and sometimes it's from your present day life. It's something that's happening, right? And you're looking at it and you're remembering it. And then you go and find the matching tile and you flip it over and it's going to be the tile from your childhood. And those two things line up and match and connect. And you put them together and suddenly you've got a complete picture of what's taken place. And other times you flip the tile over and it's some memory from your childhood. And you're like, why am I seeing this now? Why am I remembering that? And then you search and then you find the other memory that matches it as an adult and you flip it over and you put them together and the circle's complete. And so the whole game of life is just going through all of those fucking memories and flipping them over one at a time and finding the correlating, connecting, matching tile block piece that fits so that you have the whole complete picture of why you are the way that you are and your life is the way that it is. Isn't that beautiful?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that so much. I was like, where are you going with this? And then I'm like, oh, wow, that was profound. And I'm never going to forget that. This is like bizarro. This is like you and I doing our thing where like a lot of times we're on the same page, right? We're on the same page, right? Were you thinking of this today? When did you have your memory game of life?
This is one of those that came to me because there's that window of wake up time for Craig where it's somewhere between like 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock where things will start flowing through in my consciousness and I'm either half asleep or fully asleep or I'm coming to, or sometimes it's the 1 o'clock hour when I'm getting up to take a piss. And I'll have this thought. And so it was somewhere this morning.
It was this morning. Okay, this is crazy. So I definitely didn't have the memory game, but I had something come to my mind this morning when I was getting ready about healing and how it like ties in, and you can make an association with retrograde. For those that like astrology,
for those that believe in Mercury retrograde,
and all the retrogrades, right? Because it's not just Mercury that goes retrograde; it's just Mercury goes retrograde.
In this house, we believe in Mercury retrograde
more often. It goes 3 times a year usually, so that's like why you hear that one. But everything goes retrograde, which is the moving backwards, the getting to go back and reflect. But the thing that got me with the healing journey and how it applies to life is that the planets don't actually go backwards. That's just how they describe it, right? It's not like they go throw it in reverse and backing it up. It's just the way that they're perceived from the angle of the earth and the orbit that is like ovalish in a way, and going that the way it crosses and looks, it's still going, but it appears as that it's going backwards. So that I was like, oh my gosh, that's like life, that's healing, because it's going back and getting another time to look at all of these things. And when things start to resurface in your life, when you start to experience old patterns, old behaviors, and you're fighting the same fights that you've already fought, and you're like, why am I here again? Why is this coming up again? Why am I doing this again? And it feels like you're moving backwards, but you're not. You're just getting this chance to look at it again and to heal further and to move. And even though it feels and looks like you're going backwards, you're always moving forward. So you're gaining more and you're learning more. And I'm like, okay, I'm having thoughts about how healing looks and how you're not actually moving backwards, even though it feels like everything is moving forwards. And you're tying healing with memory and your inner child memory and your now. And I'm like, how funny that we were doing that on the same day without talking to each other.
Right. It happens all the time, babe.
I thought
You
that
and
was
me.
cool.
Matt, pull up. I want to see if you can find memory games from the 80s. Like I was going to do this earlier today
Yeah.
and then I got too squirrely, but it's like I want to find the one that I had as a kid, because it was like my game.
Yeah.
And I was like always so excited when my brothers would play with me, because very rarely would they like play some, the story was in my head that, like they don't want to play this stupid little kid game. It's a little baby game that they're playing with me, because they always had to dumb games down for me.
I'm going to see if I'm going to remember it.
I think it seems like maybe that red, the tiles were green, I think, like the back, because they had red backs or green backs. Anyways, we'll see if you can find it. I don't know.
I don't remember. I'm interested when you pull it up if it's going to look familiar for me, because I remember doing like Disney princesses and Disney characters with the kids. I remember the memory games that I had with the kids, but I don't necessarily remember it from when I was a kid. I don't know that I might have, but I remember playing it with the kids all the time.
I don't think I remember. I'm sure I did probably play. There it is.
Is that
That's it. Fucking Animal Families right there. Fucking awesome. $28 on eBay.
That's pretty cool
Fuck
that
yes.
he found that so quickly.
Oh my God. Like
He just pulled up a...
does it say when it was released? 1980?
It says 1980.
So released the year before I was born. That's totally it. That's so funny. There are so many things like that in life where
Can you almost like smell it
I
and
can.
feel it?
I
Yeah.
can remember the feel of it. I can remember like everything about it, the thickness of that's insane. That's so cool. Can you zoom in on some of the other pictures of it? I want to see if any of them stand out. I remember the seal, the chipmunk. Is that like a white seal or something on the rock above the horse there? Yes, that one.
Remember that one?
The white seal. That guy right there. That was like one of my favorite ones. That's so cool.
Wow.
We may have to buy that and play it.
Well, I think we can get it for $28.
Right? That's so cool. I'm glad you found that. So we do this all the time where we'd really try to lean into inner child stuff, because for whatever reason that came to me this morning, and now we're talking about it on the podcast, and we'll probably end up buying that game. But every opportunity that we get to see something that, not necessarily see something, but because we do that all the time, where it's like we're leaning into connecting with that part of us for whatever reason, right? That part of us is coming through to express something, share something. And it really is interesting too, Steph, if we sit and, I don't know, this podcast just started. I don't know if I want to go into this stuff, but the conversation that we were having last night and kind of like the deep processing that I was kind of going through. Actually, it's a really good lead-in for this episode.
Really good. It was a good conversation. Yeah.
So I guess this is what we're going to talk about. The episode today we're excited to talk about because we have this phrase that we use all the time, and it's tell me more. So it's just simple enough. It's 3 words. Tell me more. 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 And we will use it when we're communicating to each other and practicing the fine art of both listening and communicating. So we're going to get to that in a little bit and explain a little bit more in depth about what it is, how to do it. We have a whole game that we're going to share with you that you can actually do with your partner. And it's going to really, really not just change the way that you communicate and connect, but it can lead to what we're going to share right now. It kind of leads to the capacity and the ability to have deeper, more meaningful, intimate, vulnerable, real conversations with your partner. And for us, that's what it's all about. Like, yes, we talk all the time. We have, varying levels of communication and connection and everything like that. But the things that have really changed our life and our relationship and really made our relationship both strong, but like our bond stronger and stronger and stronger, right, is when we have these type of conversations, those type of really deep, intimate, vulnerable, hard conversations. And they're not always hard and difficult, but
sometimes they're just hard for the person saying it, and they presume that it's hard for the other person hearing it, but it's not always. It's just really hard to be vulnerable in that state.
So this is an example. I'll share what happened last night, and it gives you an idea of this game that we're going to be sharing with you later on in the episode. When you practice this skill set, when you practice this technique, it can lead to what we're about to talk about. And I'm trying to think about how I want to do this too, because it's pretty raw and fresh. It was literally just last night. I had a situation yesterday where I recognized I had to be out of the house. I had to leave at like 5:00 in the afternoon. And I knew that I wanted to leave at a specific time. So then that way I was not rushed and not hurried. And you and I got into a conversation about 4:00. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I could feel the conversation that we were getting into was starting to be a deeper conversation, because you were going through some things and you were wanting to express some things and kind of process some things. And I was just listening. So I was implementing this technique of just like active listening and being present with you and hearing you out. And then in the back of my mind, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, okay, at some point I have to communicate that I need to go because I didn't want to be late. And I never did. I didn't communicate that to you until like the very end, where it was like 5 minutes before I had to be out the door and I still had to finish getting ready and do all these kind of different things before I could go. And so by the time I left, I was in a rush, and it kind of just put me into a tailspin for the rest of my evening. And then when I got back home, I come back home like several hours later, and I was still activated. I was still uneasy. And what I had realized over the course of the few hours that I was gone and I was sitting there processing all of it was I could but I was able to process through what had happened, because when I left the house, I was aggravated and upset. And I wasn't like angry, but I was just dysregulated. And I kind of watched my thoughts, and I could see how I was frustrated with you and how the stuff that you were expressing and talking about and communicating about, gosh. I was frustrated because the way that a part of me interpreted the situation was you made me late. You were the cause of me not being ready to go and out of the house. So I had this like resentment built up for you. So I witnessed and watched this thought process, right? And then I looked at it and I'm like, okay, that had nothing to do with you. And I'm like, what am I really feeling underneath that resentment? Because it's not like you had done anything wrong. And I realized that what I was really upset by was I didn't communicate much earlier in the conversation and say, hey, it seems like this conversation is getting a little bit more deep, and I don't have the space and time to have that conversation with you right now. So we need to push pause on this because I have to get ready. And I should have set a boundary for myself. I should have spoken needs in regards to what I needed in that moment and what was important to me. And I didn't do that. And that's what I was really angry about. I was really angry at myself for not communicating that clearly to you. And then I was also like, I wasn't so angry at myself for feeling resentment towards you, because I saw the dynamic of, like, I saw how that was going, and I didn't necessarily express that to you or anything like that. I wasn't, I processed all of this when I was gone. So it's not like you got any sort of negative feedback from me or anything like that. And then I come home and I talk to you about it, and I express how I kind of went through that whole process, and I had awareness of, like, oh, I wasn't communicating my needs, and I was placing your needs over my needs, and I was prioritizing what you needed over what I needed. And right now in my life, I'm trying to unpack codependency in such a way that I've never done before. And one of the things that I know from healing, from therapy, from just deep processing and inner work is I am very codependent, and I have massive attachment issues. And so the way that I will be in relationship with you is by prioritizing your needs, wants, desires, your emotional safety, your physical, like, I will just simply place all of my needs far, like, not primary, secondary, far less over your needs. And over time, I've come to witness and realize how detrimental that is for both of us. So I've been trying to shift that up. And that dynamic of recognizing that, oh, here was another example where I subconsciously did that exact thing, where had I just said, 10 minutes into that conversation, hey, babe, this is getting really good. Like, this is a really good episode of the Steph and Craig show that I want to tune into, right? This conversation is getting really good, and I want to be present with you for it. And I'm not really able to be present with you because I have to leave. And I could have communicated that need to you in the moment, and you would have said, I totally understand. Everything's okay. We can pick this up later on. And instead of doing that, I did the opposite. And I was so mad because how slippery that is. Like, it just happens so subconsciously, where I will not voice, express, even be aware of my needs because I'm so hyper-focused on what yours are. So we're talking about it then after I get home, and I'm kind of processing it. And I suddenly came into this space of, I was communicating to you all of these things, and you were doing such a beautiful job of just like listening and hearing and being present with me. And I don't know if you remember this, I'm sure you did since it was just last night, but I couldn't even, like, I was so kind of activated still when I got home that I couldn't even really communicate to you. It was like I was trying to go to bed, and you had some other things you were trying to do, and you were like, I was coming off like I was angry with you because I was so twisted up in knots inside because I had been stewing about this and processing this and getting angry at myself for doing this toxic behavior that I'm trying to change and heal and all these kind of different things. And finally, it was just like you were kind enough to, like, whatever you had that you needed to take care of, you put on the back burner, and you just showed up in the moment and were there with me and allowed me to flesh all of this stuff out with you. And it became this really deep experience of me going in and looking at the dynamic of, because what happened was, it's so funny, babe, that we have these conversations in front of the podcast because we didn't plan this. I wasn't planning on talking about this. What happened was I communicated all of these things, and then I had a moment after communicating all of it where I recognized that I was really now wanting you to validate me and show me, like, validate is a good word for it, but I needed you to, or I wanted you to validate me in that moment. And I recognized that in order for the validation that I was looking for and that I was feeling the need for was, I wanted you to validate how hard of a life I had had. So then what you would be validating was not only how hard of a life that I have had, but how much of an improvement I've been making. So it was like twofold, where see me and validate me for how good of a job I'm doing, but not just in the present moment, but also fully acknowledging how much I've healed, evolved, changed up until that point. And that really caught me in the moment, and I had to really sit in it for a little bit. And what happened was I could feel this like really difficult emotion in my body start trying to be felt and processed, but I couldn't. It's like every time I tried to go towards it and try to feel it and express it and communicate it, it would just like slip through my fingers. It would just hide. It would cover up. It would, dissolve into the fog and into the mist. And I couldn't connect to what it was to try to articulate it. And so then we just had this moment. I'm getting all uncomfortable now. Let me adjust and shift some things. Surely I need to fuck around with my microphone. Where I had this moment where I was able to just sit in that feeling and let it bubble up to the surface and articulate some like very few words and recognize that I was like really in this moment of embodying a really young version of me. I felt very small, probably, the same age I was playing that memory game, 3 or 4 years old, and seeing the dynamics of how I had a program and a story that I was given as a child that my needs weren't important and necessary, and the only way that they were deemed worthy of attention, or that I was deemed worthy of attention / love, was if it was a really terrible situation. Like it had to be a very severe thing before I got attention. And fast forward to as an adult, that's kind of the recognition I had, where it was like I wanted you to validate me in the moment, but not just like, yeah, you're doing a good job of having this awareness, but I needed that validation to come through the lens of like, don't you see how hard it's been for me? And that was really hard to sit in. It was like twofold, where I was stuck in this little inner child version of me, like 4-year-old Craig, just full of emotion and pain, and being witnessed by you in those moments was really hard. But also I kept trying to come back to like present higher consciousness Craig as an adult, to put the pieces together and understand that coping mechanism as a child was developed because of X, Y, and Z, and this is how it's manifesting as an adult. And I just kept struggling in that space of coming from the inner child version back into the adult version. And eventually I just kind of gave up and just melted into this emotion. And the entire time you did this amazing job of just sitting with me and being with me and listening to me and holding space and processing this through with me. And there was a point where I needed to ask for help. Like I needed you to reflect back to me what you had heard me say, but reflect back to me through a lens that kind of, share some of your experience of this, babe, because now I'm getting incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, the reason I'm bringing this up and talking about it is because you're reminding me to breathe. Because it's a really good example of tell me more, and how practicing open and honest and vulnerable communication with each other leads to these kind of experiences where we're able to connect in this way. And I'm sure there's a part of this narrative that people have where like what that was for us, or that level of healing with each other, is probably something that shouldn't happen in a relationship. That's probably something that you should save for like a therapist or something like that. And I don't believe that. I believe that level of like connection and the ability for you to sit with me as I process some really deep inner child wounds, as well as have them like totally rise up the surface and bubble up and be felt and experienced. I mean, I think it was an incredibly beautiful experience that I'm grateful that you were there for, and that you were able to help me in. And it's not like this is the thing where it's, that's not your responsibility, blah, 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 all those narratives, all that story that people have around like, that's why you save that shit for your therapist. I disagree. I think that it's very beautiful that you and I have the ability to help each other in that way. And I'm really grateful that you were there with me to help me through that process. So now, I asked you earlier, right? Share some of what you experienced from it and your thoughts around it. And I will take a deep breath. Hey, everybody, we just wanted to take a minute and push pause real quick to thank you for being here and listening to the Steph and Craig show. We know there's a lot of options out there when it comes to podcasts, and we are incredibly grateful that you chose us. The things that we have heard on podcasts have helped both of us in our healing journey. So we believe that they're incredibly powerful, and we have an important mission with this podcast that we need your help with. Head over to YouTube and search out the Steph and Craig show. Be sure to click on the subscribe button, and don't forget about the little bell for those notifications so that you don't miss an episode. One other thing you can do is share it with somebody, whether it's this episode you're listening to right now or one of the other episodes that you've really enjoyed. We love you, we care about you, and we're on a mission to help you create better relationships and live your best life, because we believe we all do better when we heal together. Now let's get back to the show.
First of all, you did a really good job last night. Like, I could see that there was a lot of emotion coming up in you, and that what you were working through was big, that it had a lot more to do with the way that it was manifesting on the surface. It was easy to see that because you were doing such a good job at communicating your experience. And really, the way that you brought that to me, you weren't saying you did this, you made me feel like this, and I had to overcome and look at things because of, like, you were very much taking accountability for your actions, how you were feeling, what you were experiencing. And I know I'm saying you, so that might be intense, but the way that you were speaking was in I terms. This is how I was feeling. This is what I noticed. This is what it brought up for me. This is what I started to see that I need to shift and change in our dynamics. This is what I see. This is how I see I've been acting before. So there was a massive amount of accountability on your part where you were really sharing with me really openly about your experience. And like, you did such a good job. It was really beautiful to watch you like go through this space, because you did most of the work. You did have a moment where you asked, and as you mentioned that, and that was a really healthy thing to be able to do. I know that there is work that is for therapists. There is work, and like trauma dumping all over your partner is a thing that, you know, maybe you don't want to do. There's all these different levels, but my personal belief is therapists are amazing. Therapists are amazing. Everybody, if you have the opportunity to have a therapist, like, don't wait till your world's falling apart. If you have the opportunity, find one and talk some things out. They are amazing. We all need help, whether it's a therapist, a coach, however, like, we all need help. And your inner child, your wounded parts are going to come up in your relationship. They are going to come up. You cannot wait until you are with your therapist, the 1 hour that you have, before your inner child surfaces, before your wounded part surfaces. You have to know how to like navigate that in a relationship with somebody, because it's going to come up. It's going to come up. And having a partner that sees you in your space of where you're hurting and you're working through that, to say, take that away and go deal with that with your therapist, would be really fucked up, in my opinion. So I'm really grateful that you felt safe enough to go through that with me. And I'm also really lucky that I got to see you show me those parts of you. And sometimes things can get messy. I understand that. Sometimes I get it way wrong and I take things personal and I think it's about me and I get defensive. And sometimes, you know, the same for you. We have these moments, but we practice. We practice what we talk about. We practice communicating with each other. We practice. And a lot of times we get it right. And even if it's not right 10 years from now, we get it right for where we are in that moment. And we're willing to keep learning and keep growing and keep getting it right at different levels. And so I was like, it was beautiful to watch you go through that. It was beautiful to be a part with you. And like, you did such a good job in communicating needs that were really, really hard. You were scared to say this one thing. It was really, really hard. And then the other one, you were able to clarify it so clearly, and just, you bounced through this space of really being able to sit with yourself, be with yourself, honor yourself, hear yourself, and be accountable for yourself. It wasn't hard for me at all. You did a really good job. And I'm glad that we get to practice.
Right.
Yeah. And that is also a learning experience because I learned more about you. I learned more about you than I knew before that conversation. And the next time we're in a space of where maybe you're not handling it the best, I'm going to have this now peace and understand where you're coming from. Or there's going to be a part where my defenses kick in and I start thinking you're attacking me, you're projecting on me, you're judging me, you're blaming me. And I have this peace that maybe I can touch in at that point and be like, this isn't actually about you. He's showing you a spot that's a little sore right now. This isn't about you. So having those moments together, I learn more about you. You learn more about me when it's the other way around. And it's another piece to our healing that we get to bring into future conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty impactful, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty powerful moment. And I definitely need to sit through it some more and process some of this stuff. I was thinking about it this morning too as well when I was in that loopy phase of wake up time where I'm getting information in a sense. And I knew that there was a lot that came up for me. I knew that there was stuff that was still kind of in the murk of the subconscious and in the shadow that I didn't have super clear awareness of. But at the same time, it felt like a really big piece of just, healing and awareness and a nice little chunk of inner child work that took place that I was really grateful for. So this game that we're going to share now, right? I want to get into it because it really is, we just went through the process of what happens when you practice this game and you have the ability to connect and communicate with each other. So it's the Tell Me More game. And it kind of stemmed from our life and our lived experiences. You want to break into this song?
That's all I can hear right now. Every time you say tell me more. It wasn't love at first sight.
Tell me more, tell me more. Did you know that in 8th grade or something like that, I think it was definitely middle school, there was a children's sociable in the town that I grew up in.
What's a sociable for people that were not raised in Utah?
Right. So a sociable would be like a gathering and a get together. And the town that I grew up in, that we used to live in, Grantsville, they had this long running sociable that was
it,
started probably back in the 20s or the 30s or something like that. And it was a get together. Think of it as like a celebration of the town, and people would come and there would be performances, like there would be a show.
They had like a children's.
And then there'd be a dance.
And they had like one that they called an old folks.
The old folks sociable.
Old folks sociable. That was like a real thing.
Yeah, the old folks sociable was the original
it's still a thing.
And then at some point along the way, I don't know how long or when they had it, but they had a children's sociable. And I participated in the children's sociable. Do you know this story?
No, I was like, because I've never actually been to one. Even though I wonder if it's not just a Utah thing, if it's a small town.
Probably. There's probably some equivalent.
If it's like unique to Grantsville.
No, I'm sure the sociable. See if you can find where the old folks sociable in Grantsville first started. But I think that it's probably a thing.
Is it like a thing? I don't know.
It's probably like the prom.
I didn't know about it, and then I heard I started hearing about the old folks sociable, and I'm like, is it like speed dating for old people? And then I was like, oh, wait, is this just like a glorified talent show? And I've never been. So it's like, that's why I'm like, you explain a little bit more
I've never been to the old folk sociable either.
In the same county.
I don't know where, I don't know about.
Like where it came from.
Old folk, like people, old folk sociable, Grantsville, Utah. Anyways, they had a children's sociable that would happen at the same time period. So like the old folk sociable would be on Saturday, and then the children's sociable would be during the week, right?
I think it's for Grantsville.
75 years. Oh, it's for older people who are 75 years or older.
In Grantsville.
Yeah, babe. But
I think it might be unique to Grantsville.
No, I'm sure the sociable thing is a thing.
And a LDS thing. Because here we go, Grantsville, LDS, Old Folks Day. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, anyways.
It might be a Grantsville thing.
So the whole point of this fucking rabbit hole tangent
I want to hear it. Yeah.
Was, holy cow, that website.
I didn't know there was a website.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's the Grantsville
There you
sociable.
go. If you're near Grantsville, you want to check it out.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's a good time. I mean, that looks like a party to me.
I mean,
that's something I want to hang out with.
Yeah. Oh, you've already missed it for 2024,
Damn
but
it.
there's always 2025.
Shoot. Okay.
Aw,
So I was in the children's sociable,
Yes,
which
and?
was a glorified performance thing. So it would
yeah.
be, I mean, you name it, right? Kids singing, kids dancing, kids tapping, clogging, everything.
Grantsville's Got Talent.
Oh my gosh. It was Grantsville's version of America's Got Talent.
Yes.
And so the year that I participated in this, it was 7th or 8th grade, and it was a group of my peers. So it was all of us, all of my friends, my big friend group that I had at the time. And so it was boys and girls, and we performed that song from Grease.
Tell me more. You performed Tell Me More.
Is that the name of the song? What is the name of that song in Grease? Well, we know we can sing it,
I
babe.
know. I'm trying to see
You
if
were
I can.
saying things in your head.
I was going through it waiting to hear the title of the song because
Yeah.
all I can hear is Tell Me More.
Tell me more, tell me more.
Summer Nights.
Summer Nights. That's exactly the name of it. Yeah.
Summer Nights.
And so I'm participating in that performance.
See, that's why I was going through it in my head.
And so we sing the song, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you're familiar with the show Grease, I'm sure people are, right? There's the girls and the boys and so on and so forth. And I don't even remember what my line was. Anyways, that's not important. It was fun. This is a tangent that we can get away from. Yeah.
Oh,
So
we can get away from? No, I've got to add to it. Keep going. I've got my own Summer Night story.
Let's hear
You're not done.
I performed in it. I mean, there's not much of a story other than it was like incredibly awkward and embarrassing, and I hated everything about it. But at the same time, it was like I was excited to be a part of it because like all the cool kids were doing it.
Yeah.
So I felt very much like a cool kid.
You were.
But what sucked was that I felt like I got stuck with the dorky role.
Oh, that
So
sucks.
like I can't remember what my line was. But anyways, what's your summer night story?
It's not as cool.
Yeah, because
It's
mine
not
was
as
awesome.
cool. But there was a time when we were having a few parties. It was all like wrapped up with like my graduation, my mom's best friend getting married. There was like a bunch of things where there was a bunch of parties going on, and karaoke was a thing. So
Karaoke is still a thing, babe.
Okay, well, I'm not
It's
saying
not
this.
quite as big of a deal.
Well, it's because I'm not doing it anymore.
Okay.
So karaoke's went down a notch or two.
Right.
Since Steph's Summer Nights isn't now a thing.
That was the pinnacle.
It really was. Okay, I'm really embarrassed. I'm trying to make jokes because anyways, it was fun. But there was so my mom's best friend's husband was like super nice, and they loved karaoke. They are karaoke and mofos. They are just out there just having a great time. But a couple of times he would come up and he would grab me, and that's the song that we would sing. And so I'm like, because I loved Grease.
Right.
So I'm this 18, 19-year-old just like holding on to the mic and trying to not be nervous because he was so nice and having so much fun. But I was also like, and he's like got 2 feet on me, I swear.
Yeah.
He was this tall guy. So I'm just like, this is awkward, but it was so much fun. So we would like sing Summer Nights. And it was also in
When you say
Twilla
we
County.
would, like, did you do it multiple times?
We did it a couple of times.
Thing?
It was a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah, not the same party either. And he was like,
Oh, it's like it's
We're
time.
going.
Steph, we're going
Let's
up for Summer
go.
Nights.
so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
We should do karaoke. That's one thing
Yeah?
we haven't done together.
I think we should do our own version of Summer Nights.
On the podcast next week. So anyways, this Tell Me More theory has nothing to do with Grease or Summer
Right?
Nights. But the whole idea is that
Tell me more.
open and honest communication with your partner takes a ton of practice. And what we started to recognize and realize was it was twofold, where active listening is a skill set. The ability to sit and actually engage and be present and hear somebody as they're talking is a really, really big skill set that takes a lot of practice. And so we had to bring awareness to that and be like, okay, I need to make sure that I put my phone away. I need to make sure that I'm really present. I'm really engaged. And the only thing that I need to remember and kind of hold in the back of my mind in those moments is tell me more. Tell me more. Just the encouragement of allowing your partner to communicate and express and say more and more and more about what they're experiencing and what they're feeling. So that was a really big component of it. And we started to really practice and implement that with each other. But then we realized that there was another side to it where the active listening part took a lot of practice, and it was something that was like, oh my gosh, hard at first, and it still takes a lot of practice at times. But we needed practice being the talker as well. So it wasn't just the listener that needed practice, it was the talker, because being able to openly express yourself and be able to communicate yourself and be able to say hard things and all of that kind of stuff takes a lot of practice as well. So we have a game that we're going to share with you. And the game specifically is focusing on these two things, right? The ability to openly communicate and express your thoughts and your feelings, as well as be able to sit and actively hear and be present with the person expressing.
Can I speak to that just for a minute before we go on? Because I know there's part of out there that's like, it's not hard to talk. It's not hard to speak your needs, in a sense that some people would think that, but what we're actually talking about is like deep needs, deep conversation. And those can be really, really hard. So, and it doesn't matter if what end of the spectrum that you're on, whether you're somebody that talks a lot or if you're somebody that doesn't speak very much, that keeps things like really wrapped down. Because a lot of times the people that are really speaking a lot are speaking past the big ones. They're speaking past the big things. They're keeping it light. They're moving on. They're not talking about the deep things that are in there. So it gets hidden. And those that aren't speaking, well, obviously they're not speaking. So it goes into so many different levels there. But it is, no matter where you are, it can be really scary to speak about things that you actually need, things that you want that are below the surface, and not things that you have that you feel is safe to express, or in a sense, depending on where you're at, maybe you feel like you've had permission to say. So if you're going and saying things that might rock the boat, even if they won't, even if it's like the silliest, smallest thing, but to you and
right,
to the way
like they will.
You feel like this, if I ask for this thing, then it's going to destroy everything. They're going to hate me. They're going to leave. They're going to flip out. They're going to hurt me. They're going to be violent. Like, there's so many different things that we learned as a kid on how that can come up. And then when we find these things, when we started learning these things as a kid, we tend to choose relationships that reiterate that and keep those going, not just with our partners, but like at work, with our friends. Like so it keeps coming, which means these beliefs get embedded deep, which makes it really, really scary and really hard to talk. So being able to open that space and to start to say things that are really, really scary is a lot of practice and a lot of work for most people. Of course, there's people out there that are secure, that have practiced talking and asking for their needs. They're like, and you might be one of them, and that's amazing. But for the majority, I feel most of us really, really struggle with that. They really, really struggle. So it's a big deal. And it's something that you might think, oh, well, your partner's good about it because they're always talking. So they're always getting their needs. It's me. And inside they're like, I haven't said what I've actually wanted in years because I'm so scared to. Or you think, I got this, so I can't ask for anything else. If I ask for this, I have to be grateful for all of these things, which you do. Like, be grateful, right? But that doesn't mean that anybody's anticipated needs that they've projected onto you wipes out your rights and your ability to have needs that actually you need to communicate. So it's so hard. And I'm sure, like, for most of us, we fall somewhere on that spectrum. So maybe if your first instinct is that doesn't apply, just get curious. And how many, like, do you get resentful? There's a lot of resentments that come up in your partner and in relationships because they tend to do things that you don't think you, like, there's this thing I heard that they do things that you don't think you have the permission to do. You don't think you can do. And so when you're finding yourself being resentful, it's probably because there's a need somewhere in that for you to do that same thing, to ask for that thing, to take that time for yourself, but you don't feel like you can. You might not even recognize it. It might be so far beneath the surface. So if you're like, this doesn't apply to me, it might apply to you. And give it just a minute to play this game that we're going to go into and just practice it and see, what does it bring up?
Right. And it's important that you think of it like a game too. Like, approach it like a game. Approach it as something fun that you get to do together with your partner And if you do it in that fashion, it makes the process much, much, much easier. And as always, it's something that you're practicing. It's not something that you're perfecting. It's not something that you're going to be really good at in the beginning, most likely, because it's awkward and it's clunky, like Steph just got done explaining. So
Clunkily.
we're going to break it down for you. So if you need a pad or a pencil, does anybody carry those around anymore?
I do. I've got them all over the place.
You can also just listen to this podcast over and over and over again until you got this down. So set aside time to play this game. And all you need is really 30 minutes. And what's important is that you find time where the two of you have zero distractions. The goal is to really be present with each other for 30 minutes. And you'll see in just a minute, it's not like, oh my God, we have to hold that connection for 30 minutes. No, but you need a devoted amount of time where you're stepping into this space together and practicing this skill set and playing this game. So that's the first thing. One big caveat that we highly recommend is that this isn't at the end of the night. You don't try to do this before you go to bed. This isn't something that you're going to save until the end of the day and then try to play this game with each other. Because truthfully, by the time it's, you've gotten the kids to bed, you've dealt with everything that you need to do with the house, with work, all these other kind of issues and things like that. By the time it's, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night and you're getting ready to go to bed, your nervous systems are already kind of fried from the day and you're on the way down, and trying to connect and communicate and express in those moments, especially eventually being able to communicate really hard things, is incredibly challenging. So don't do it at the end of the day. Ideally, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, something along just find a time where you can commit to a half an hour of zero distraction and you're going to practice this game. Next up is you need to make sure that all of your needs are met. You want to make sure that you aren't hungry, that you're not thirsty, that you're not tired, that you don't need to go to the bathroom, that all of those things are kind of taken care of as well so that you can really be present in the moment.
That's a big one. Just those needs are met. Because if you're going into it with, I've got all of these things that I really need to do. I really need to pee. I don't have time for this, but come on, let's just get this. Let's just get it done. You're going into it with an energy that's going to throw it. And again, it's 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes, and it doesn't have to be every day. So just really setting aside that time. Phones are off for 30 minutes. You've taken care of yourself, and then getting ready and have a timer. Have a timer.
Yeah, that's the other really important thing.
You need 2 timers. You need a 30-minute timer and a second one for a 3 or 5 minute timer.
Let's get 6 timers. You need 6 timers.
Maybe there's phones that can do two timers at once. Maybe there's ADHD phones. I've got 6 in my head going right now. But seriously, if you you have a plan, it's don't bring your phones in it, but you need to bring your phones in it because you need timers.
Yes. So what's going to happen is you're going to take turns being the talker and being the listener. Mm-hmm. And to start out, you're going to set the timer for 3 minutes. You're just going to do 3-minute rounds. And during that 3 minutes, if you're the talker, that's all you're doing is you're just practicing, communicating, and expressing. And in the beginning, this is going to look like the focus of it is practice communicating and expressing the things that are causing you stress in your life. So that means that you have to start paying attention to those things that you want to talk about, whether it be from your day, whether it be from your week, whether it be the relationship that you're, struggling with. Maybe it's a relationship with your parents or issues that you're having with your kids or coworkers or friends or whatever's causing you stress. This is your opportunity to practice communicating that stress to your partner for 3 minutes. And that's all it is just you expressing and talking and communicating and saying the things that are causing you stress. You really want to, in the beginning as well, this is another really big, important part, is you want to hold all of the, this isn't the opportunity to vent about your partner to your partner. So if there's some issues in your relationship and things that need to be brought up and talked about, this isn't the round for that. We'll talk about later on when that is appropriate. But in the beginning, when you're just practicing this, reserve that conversation about what your issues are with your partner for a later time, because the whole goal is to start developing the ability to communicate and express in a healthy way as well as in a connected way. One of the really big things that happens when you start talking like this is you have to start taking the conversation from out of your head, meaning I'm not just communicating to you my thoughts about what's taking place in my life, but I'm practicing communicating to you my feelings about what's taking place in my life. This is the thing that took place and happened, and this is what it caused me to feel. This is how I'm feeling about that relationship with the kids, or the situation that's going on at work, or the stress that I have about this in my life. This is the feeling behind those experiences. That's what you're going to be working towards. But very first round, set the timer for 3 minutes and just talk. And then the listener obviously does that. They just listen for 3 minutes. And the goal is to be actively engaged and present with your partner as they're communicating. And this is kind of one of those things that's hard to kind of model in a sense. Active listening a lot of times isn't like, I'm not talking, right? I'm not saying, oh yeah, I'm not really doing anything other than making eye contact with you, nodding my head, being present with you. If it's appropriate at times, there might be some sort of reaction to what you're saying. But by and large, I'm just hearing the words that you're communicating, hearing the feeling, the emotion, taking that information in and just being present with it. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm not thinking about a response. I'm not fixing anything, right?
That's a big one.
Do you want to speak more to that?
I do. That's a big one, because while they're talking, a lot of times we want to fix things for our partners, or we have ideas about how we would handle it and how we think our partner then should be handling these things. And we want to let them know in a very kind, loving, helpful way of, if they did this, have they thought of this? If they tried this, they need to say this. They need to have a boundary here. Your boss can fuck off. All the ways it comes up that we want to help. And that is just like,
That's not the time for this.
That is not the
what
time.
This game's about.
That's not what they need. That's not what they're asked for. It's just about being heard. So it's not your job to fix anything. It's not your job to save it for later and be like, hey, that thing you said, this is like again, that's another time if your partner comes to you and wants help. There's a whole bunch to go here. So if you're a fixer and you have all these ideas, and if they would just do it your way and you're like coming through, this is a really, really great opportunity for you to practice just listening.
Yes, keeping your mouth shut.
Right.
And just listening.
When you can do that for your partner without jumping in and trying to fix things, over time, what they start to learn is that you're a safe place, somebody that they can speak to, that they're not having like, now they're doing it wrong and they can't say this to you because they're letting you down by not doing it this way, or they just wanted to be heard in that space and they have to keep that under wraps, or, oh, now you're freaking out and stressed out and so they're scared. It really cultivates a space of where they feel safe talking to you. And chances are that's something that you've been wanting and maybe even asking your partner for. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. But when they do, you're jumping in with all of your stuff. Now, this doesn't mean that you're wrong. If you're like, oh my gosh, that's me. You're not doing anything wrong. That's just the style of communication that you have been taught and that you've been practicing for a really long time. And this is just giving you another tool to practice communicating in a way that might open up and create some more space and connection in your relationship. So what we're saying here isn't a way to beat yourself up. If you're naturally inclined to doing that, is like, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this with my partner.
Yes. So the listener just listens for those 3 minutes. After the 3 minutes is up and the timer goes off, then you just take a break. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just kind of like
your body.
Decompress, take a drink, just take a little shift in energy, and then you switch. And the listener becomes the talker and the talker becomes the listener. And you just repeat. It's your opportunity then to express what's been coming up for you and what you've been going through. And it's really important that the first round, you're focusing on negative things. You're focusing on stresses. You're focusing on those things that are causing you a lot of heartache and emotions and fear and everything that's kind of coming up in your life. Mm-hmm. And then the 3 minutes ends again. Take a little break, a little breather, a reset. And that's round one.
I want to have a caveat for that real fast too, if that's okay. Hey, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your time with us, listening to the podcast. We know there's a lot of options out there and you're choosing your time with us. And we're so grateful that you are. Would you do us a favor? Would you subscribe to this podcast, share it, and write us a review? This helps us build the podcast. This helps us reach more and more people. And we have a goal of reaching over 1 million people. So any amount of engagement that you do really helps us achieve that. Thank you for being here. We're so grateful to you. We're so excited that you're choosing to share your journey with us and listen to a part of ours. Let's get back to the show. When it's your turn to go, if you're the second one going, that's not for you to then again, how the first one wasn't about unloading on you, the things that are frustrated. It's not now you unloading about all the things that they just said and how that's like you've got to talk about your own day, your own week, the own things that are coming up
That's
and
so
not
important.
have it like punished in a way.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Like there's the reason that we created this game was because there's layers to the reasons behind it all. By focusing on your own lived experience of what you're going through, it's literally doing this thing where you're communicating and connecting about your life. It's like when your kids come home from school and you say, "Hey, how was your day?" And they're like, "Fine." And they're like, "What did you do?" "Nothing." And then the conversation's over. Right? We don't get a lot of feedback from the people that we're in relationships with a lot of times because truthfully, people have a hard time communicating. So it's important to not just, like you said, piggyback on your partner's share, right? Whatever they were talking about, be like, "Yeah, you know, that really does piss me off too. Your boss is a really big jerk." So that's a really important thing. I'm glad you brought that up. That's round one. Round two, you flip back. Right? The listener, no, the talker becomes the listener and vice versa. Except this time you want to talk about the things that went well this week, the things that you're excited about, the things that you're looking forward to, the things that you're happy about. So the round two is all the good stuff that's going on in your life and what that is bringing up for you and what that is making you feel. You set the timer again for 3 minutes, express, and listen and listen and listen. So that's it. Those 2 rounds, first negative, second positive, 3 minutes each, both talking and listening. And over time, when you practice this, again, the goal is to get out of your head and into your body. It's less about what you think and more about what you're feeling and learning how to communicate that with your partner in a deep, connected way. So that's like phase 1 of the Tell Me More game. The other part of it is after you feel confident in this space, after you feel like you've gone through it a couple of times and you're like, seems like we're doing a pretty good job. We're talking about some harder and harder things and getting better and better at being present with each other. There's 2 things that you can do. You can either up the time, right? You can go from 3-minute rounds up to 5-minute rounds or longer if it feels appropriate. But what we would really encourage you is to now start directing those conversations as opposed to your everyday stresses and good things and bad things that are coming up for you. Now you get to bring the things that are coming up or the things that you're dealing with in your relationship. Now's the opportunity to bring those things to this space because you have a skill set now that you've been practicing for communication to bring those things up and communicate about those things. Now, it's like anything else where you get good at one thing and then you grow and expand and start something else and try to build upon it. You're going to kind of suck at this part. You're going to fail again. It's going to feel wonky again. It's going to feel hard again. And that's just simply because it comes with there's deeper emotions obviously involved in it. When we start talking about the harder things in regards to our partner and in regards to our relationship, that's going to trigger both of you. And it's going to be harder to communicate your thoughts and your feelings, both from the talking perspective. And it's going to be harder to listen as well, because when they start talking about some of the really hard things that they're going through in relation to you and your relationship, of course, it's going to activate you and trigger you. But again, you have the process, right? It's no different where you're going to set the timer for 3 minutes and the talker gets to talk, except this time we're focusing on the relationship and what's coming up for you in the relationship and what's hard for you about the relationship. And the listener just fucking listens. That's all you have to do in those moments is tell me more. Just tell me more. And you can repeat that self too. Like when we practice this, when we go through this, I will literally go through the process in my head where I will think like, well, you don't understand why I was doing that. Let me explain why that was happening.
Right.
Like
those defenses kick in.
All of those coping mechanisms and all those things will start to kick in my own body and in my own brain. And I'm out of the active listening and more in that defensive mode. Mm-hmm. And so I will just tell me more. I will repeat it in my head so that I'm reminding myself that's all I have to focus on. I just need to tell me more, babe. Tell me more. I just want to be present with you as you express. And all I have to do is listen and be as present with you in those moments as I possibly can. Yeah. So that's the Tell Me More game. What else do you want to add to it? Anything else, babe?
It's just what you just said right there. It can be really hard sometimes.
It's so hard.
Right? And then there's times it's like I'm really afraid. And that's usually what's coming up when I get defensive is I'm afraid. And so I have to remind myself, I'm like, this isn't about you. Even if you're telling me something about me, it's not about me in a sense of a way that not like I don't need accountability, but this isn't about how I need to now tell you what you're feeling is wrong and change your feeling. Oh, you just need to see it my way because what you're feeling about me is actually wrong, which is saying your feelings are wrong. And what you should be feeling is this. That's like really unhealthy. That's hurtful. So I have to remind myself, this isn't about me. You are telling me how you feel. This is how you feel. And I need to hear how you are feeling. And that helps me. That helps.
Yeah, we forgot to mention the importance of I language, where you're speaking from that perspective of I am feeling this way, I experience this I language rather than you language. So if I was to communicate an issue like I did with Stephanie that we talked about earlier, right? Where I was feeling this way based off of the interaction that we had and the things that were said, but I was feeling this, like this emotion was coming up in me, and this is what my experience was of it.
This is the experience, and this is how I felt. Not you did this and made me feel this way. This is what happened. This is how it made me feel. Yeah. This is what I'm experiencing.
Yes,
because,
so important.
Like all of that, yeah.
So, to recap, make sure you're setting aside time to do this where you're not distracted. It's not right before you go to bed when you're already tired and worn out. You've got all of your needs met. Nobody's hungry. Nobody's tired, right? This is an opportunity for 30 minutes of real deep connection with your partner. Set a timer for 3 minutes. Round 1 is the hard stuff and the negative stuff. Round 2 is the positive stuff. That positive round is also super critical when you're going through those relationship conversations. When you start navigating those conversations, it's really easy to spiral out into the negative aspects of what's going on in your relationship. And that positive round is so important. And that's why you do the negative round first and you end on the positive round, because you want to end the experience in that positivity and reminding each other why you actually love each other and why you're trying to do this thing. So don't forget how critical that positive round is. And we cannot express the importance of setting a timer. Like you're practicing this in the realm of when you first start this process, make sure you're practicing about those everyday life experiences and getting really comfortable about communicating the emotion behind your life to your partner before you move on to the relationship issues, because you're going to need that practice in those conversations about your relationship. And again, that 3-minute timer when you start the relationship conversations and go through those rounds is super critical, because it's really easy to get lost in those conversations and just start venting to each other for longer and longer and longer. And then next thing you know, the talker is just trauma dumping all of this stuff. And the listener is like, tell me more for like 10 minutes. And it's really, really, it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all.
And then it's going to be way harder for you to try and go into that space again, to try again, because you're like, last time we did that, that turned into a whole, I'm not really, turns out I'm too busy. My needs are not met. I am not willing to do this because it's so hard.
It is so hard.
The timers are super important for that, because it's giving you that space, and it's giving you also the opportunity to mess up, because you're going to mess up. So with that timer coming, if you started to like off tracks, you can even acknowledge that, like, I'll try better next time. And there you go. And it's not another 3 minutes of you explaining how you're going to try better. Just like you catch it. You're learning how to play the game. You're learning how to do this. You're going to mess it up. And it's okay that you make mistakes because you keep trying. And because you're in a safe window of these 3-minute timers in a 30-minute chunk, even if you mess up the entire time, it's 30 minutes, which means it's going to feel safer for you to try again next time that you're ready to step into that. You might even have a laugh about how you handled it at the beginning and how hard it was. And there might be times like your brain just goes, boop, blank. You're trying to, and you can't think of anything. And that's where you really challenge yourself. It's not like, pass, I can't think of anything. You're going to find something to talk about. If you're sitting there and it's like the good topics, for instance, you can be like, well, the grass was pretty today. I saw the sun come out. You just like almost free write and just think of words to say to trigger your brain into filling that space, to open your throat chakra in a sense to open the ability to speak, because sometimes it feels like your throat clenches down. And if you're like, I like these pants, they're soft, you can just start going, and then pretty soon you're connecting with that, and then you can start flowing. It's that initial getting words out. For me, that might not apply to you, but for me, it's really hard. My throat will just literally start seizing up, and I have to start saying what I can, because it feels like everything shuts down and I can't get a word out. So it's a big practice for me, and maybe that'll help you if you get stuck there too.
The practice part is also just incredibly important. It takes a ton of practice. And as always, like the more you practice something, the better you're going to get at it and the easier you're going to get. And then you get to the point where it's a natural way of communicating with each other, where you're actively in these spaces all the time and able to drop into hard conversations and moments and being able to be present with your partner. And like we just talked about at the beginning of the episode, being able to help each other through some really difficult times when needed and when things come up, because obviously things come up and that's going to happen. So thank you, everybody. We hope that you found this helpful. If you did find it helpful, let us know. We want to hear about what this looks like in your life. And if you have fun with the Tell Me More game, we would love to hear about it. Please share this episode. We literally think that this has the potential to like save relationships. It gives you a framework to be able to talk and communicate. And so share it with your friends, share it with your neighbors, your family, your partner. Make sure that as many people as possible get this information, because we think it's really, really important. And it's not brand new. It's just a fun little game packaged in such a way where it makes communication easier with each other. So thank you for all the support with the podcast. Thank you for, we're just beyond happy right now at everything that has blossomed and grown because of this podcast. So thank you for all the support, and for everybody out there, wherever you're listening, do us a solid and just subscribe, click the notification button. All of those kind of things really help. We have a mission to reach millions of people with this podcast, and we need your help with that. So if you haven't yet, do go to YouTube, subscribe to us there, follow us. We could sit and talk about this all day long.
We're on all the socials.
Yeah.
Give us a follow, give us a share. Thank you.
Right. We've got a mission with the podcast. It's to reach and help as many people as possible, because we just all do so much better when we can heal together. So
we love you. We believe in you. We believe that healing is possible when we do it together.
Thank you, everybody. And our mantra that we leave every episode with, or end every episode with, is expect the best.
Plan for the greatest.
We'll see you guys soon.
Wait and see, you and me. We were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal experiences and insights, things we have found to be helpful on our healing journey. But we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe that we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.